Hello, everybody, and welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And it's Thursday, and of course, it's Caleb Jade Day, which we've all been looking forward to. I know Caleb has been giving us the most incredible information, dropping incredible truth bombs, and giving us a whole bunch of information and truths that I know many of us haven't even heard before. However, before we move on to Caleb, I would just like to give a shout out to our amazing sponsor, Spooky 2, who are the creators of the Home Rife machines, a range of from the Home Rife machines that they've created themselves over time. Just as a matter of interest, for those of you who are wondering about this, I'm not sure if you're aware that the original creator of Spooky 2 machines was actually murdered because of this technology. And then it was later on taken over by John White, he's actually been on Aquarius Rising Africa a couple, I think 2 or 3 times we've interviewed him. Really, really amazing guy who's now taken over from that. And they've created these incredible frequency machines. And I tell you, whenever something like that happens, when someone's life gets taken because of something they've created, I would say that's a good enough reason for us to check it out, right? So if you're interested in checking it out and looking, and you can check out their website, drop my name for a 5% discount on your product. And before we actually go ahead with Caleb, we're just going to play the ad up front today for their little testimonial. So we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Hello, my name is Martijn van Beek, and I am living in the Netherlands, the city of Nijmegen, near the German border. But my latest success with Spooky has to do with a disease on my leg, an inflammation. It's called Pyoderma gangrenosum, gangrene. And I was afraid, I didn't sleep for a couple of nights because I was afraid that I'd lose my underleg on the left side. The wound got bigger and bigger, and all around the leg, other infections started to become major. And even in the hospital, I heard later that my dermatologist was afraid that I was going to lose my leg in the end. But with Spooky Generator X and Generator X Pro, I used it every day, twice a day, for 1 hour on Pyoderma gangrenosum, and also for Pseudomonas bacteria, which were inside my leg, and that was to be seen in tests. I got to the hospital, and my dermatologist was very surprised to see how it had healed. It was almost closed, so she was very glad, and she said, well, finally a patient where it went right. So I'll greet you. Thank you. Bye.
He's a Hollander. Attachment. I'll greet you. I love that. Well, there you go. Wow. Purely by frequencies, people are actually healing gangrene in the body, which is a miracle in itself. Anyway, Caleb, before we carry on, I'm wondering if you would please like to just open up in prayer for us.
Sure. Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. Thank you for your strength, your peace, your mercy. Thank you for your word. Thank you for everything you've done for us. We ask that you complete your will as quickly as possible here so we don't have to deal with this madness much longer. We ask that you protect us, help us to forgive Those who've hurt us, help us to be strong. In spite of ourselves, just live through us. Let us be your reflection of glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Wow. These certainly are crazy times. And I do believe, I mean, I know we recently spoke about the Wild Hunt, right? And
Right.
was Sunday the anniversary of the Wild Hunt? Past Sunday.
Yes, thereabouts.
With that big full moon and
It's
the
always a
eclipse
hard
and
time of the
everything.
year for me. So.
Yeah. So, you know, just based on that, I mean, I think I'd just like to draw that actually to everyone's attention, you know, now that we know what we're dealing with at certain times as well. You know, we've always been told about like Halloween and Christmas and stuff like that, right? But now, you know, with the story you're telling us as well, you know, this is also the time where obviously the veil is thinning, and all these crazy creatures of the night appear out of nowhere, which really does wreak havoc with humanity. So I think it's really important that we can recognize that, right, and understand what's going on. As a matter of interest, before we go ahead, I would just like to ask you, from where you're at, advice, you know, when we're dealing, because I know on this platform, we've got these crazy attacks and these crazy harassers at the moment coming in from every angle. And I think a lot of it also has to do maybe with the time of the year and what you're speaking about as well. So how would you say is the best way for us to deal with that? How do we protect ourselves from that, basically?
Well, it's like I said before, spiritual health is extremely important. It's like having your mother tell you to always wear clean underwear. You never know what's going to happen to you. You don't want people to see you like that with dirty underwear on. So it's similar in concept, but far more important. So get yourself right with God, accept his son and saving grace, and learn about him and what he does, because he's real. He's a real God. He's not just a stone thing that's animated by something else. He's the creator. So get yourself okay with him. Then learn how to talk to him, how to pray. That's what praying is, just talking. A lot of people think it's you do all these weird religious rituals to pray to God. No, you just talk. Just talk to him. It doesn't have to be always happy. It can be angry, however you're feeling. And once you learn how to talk to him, then you can start to ask him, because you start to trust him. That's how I do it. And I stay very well protected. Does not mean that you're going to be attack free. It just means that you'll know how to handle it.
I think what you said there is so profound and actually so beautiful, because when you learn how to talk to God, you learn how to trust God. And I think that is something is so important. And of course, talking to God, communicating with God is really what it's about, right? Understanding that, as you say, God is real, not just some fictitious character that lives up in the sky somewhere.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is actually not our home. This is a Shadowland compared to that real reality.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to at some point get into the Shadowland and what it's all about, but I know there's a lot of stuff, and I'm actually making a note here, because I know there's a lot of stuff that we'd like to get through today as well. And I know we've spoken in the past as well. And I just want to say to our viewers as well, I know there's been a lot of questions coming in for Caleb. I am keeping them aside. We are going to be including Q&A at some point as well. There's a lot that we're going to be doing still, especially going into the new year as well, with Caleb's show. So stay tuned, because this is really an important. And you know, guys, I want to just say this to you as well. You know, at this time, we're just talking about the attacks at this point. And really, this channel is not and our guests because we have the caliber of guests that we do, we are no stranger to these crazy attacks. But, you know, the one thing I know for sure is when someone stands and screams and shouts and blows their own trumpet about who they are, what they've done, how many times they've done it, and anyone who threatens you or insults you and then says, I'm praying for you in the name of Jesus Christ, that is not coming from God. So it's not just the attacks and the threats, but it's also a lot of these people come in there pretending to be these warriors of Christ, but meanwhile they have no problem threatening, abusing, hurling, telling you about their great big success stories and who they've been, right? That's what you be careful of. You know, one thing I know about you, Caleb, and you know that I've been speaking to you for a little while now, is I've understood you very humble. It's taken you a lot to get to this point. So this, for me, is one of the ways we get to recognize the real truthers out there and those who speak crap. And that's really the bottom line. There's a lot of people pretending to be things. There's a lot of people screaming and shouting about all their things they've done. It's the ones that aren't screaming and shouting about it. It's the ones that are talking about it in a very different way. And the way you're talking about it is what we subscribe to. So I want to just say, be aware of that. There's a lot of people out there at the moment claiming to have been things and done things. And I would really put a question mark on that, especially when they come across in an egotistical way, threatening you in the name of Jesus Christ. A lot is wrong with that. Anyway, Caleb, we spoke about you in the Gateway program and what that was the setup for you. Then going into the wild hunt at the age of 10, where you had that incredibly traumatic experience. And after that, how they pretty much groomed each of you guys in the way, as you call it, I like the way you call it, they put you in a big sand pit and they could really see the toys and things and toys, the gifts and things you guys had, right? So, and of course, that took you then to your training in the US military, military, and what that entailed. But before we go there, I would even like to go back, because I know you mentioned previously that part of what they did was enhance you, right? And I'm not talking super soldier type enhancement. I know that's not even something that we go into because whatever. But let's talk about the enhancing that you had. And when was the first time your handlers actually enhanced you, and how did they enhance you? Can you take us back to that?
When I was 10, I was taken to a small clinic, not the main hospital, but kind of a building in the back of the hospital, and given a grape-flavored drink, which is a horrible association with Kool-Aid and Jim Jones and all that kind of stuff. So I called it Jim Jones. That's kind of my era, was when that was happening. So I remember I had to lay on a gurney, and I'm not sure exactly what it did to me. I couldn't tell you what was in it. I was only 10, so I couldn't tell you, but that's the first thing I took. It kind of, I don't want to say it got me high, but it did something to me. It just started to change how I was. Some sort of drug cocktail, I'm sure.
Now we hear a lot of stories about Adreno. Am I on the right track? Do you know?
Honestly, I don't know at that time what it was, but I can tell you what I did see laying on that gurney. I think that the best way to describe what I saw, I don't know if you recall the TV show, The Muppet Show.
Yeah.
Remember the creepy doctor with his little weird looking beaker friend or whatever?
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, I saw a green man, all green, in a lab coat. It looked just like that doctor with no eyes. Just smooth. Scared me beyond fear, I think. That scared me more than anything, because I couldn't get off this gurney. And it was about then that they started to, well, the first of the enhancements, they started that procedure. Sorry, it just made me shake a little bit here, so sorry. It's really hard to talk about.
I understand. Okay, I know at some point. Okay, is that the same? Is that the same time, or is that the time that you would have had the implant in your eye?
Yes, that was the preparation for it. I had to go to this clinic for about 2 weeks before that happened. So the way I think about it now is I had to acclimate to whatever they were going to put into my body. And I think that was part of that cocktail, was to prepare me for that.
If you can recall the 2 weeks, let's say, or the time between the cocktail and the time between the implant, were there any changes that you felt? Were you going through anything stranger than usual? I mean, I understand there would have been a preparation process. I'm just trying to see if it was a spiritual, mental preparation or more of a physical preparation.
I think it was both. I'm pretty sure it was both.
Right. Do you recall when they put the chip in your eye?
I wouldn't call it a chip. Eventually we'll get to that subject, but it's a small black cube that you can see. It's in my right eye. I've been to the optometrist, eye doctors, whatever you want to say about eye doctors. And some of them just plain can't see it, and others say, "Oh, that's normal. That's just an occlusion. It's just a shadow." It's like, a shadow of what? So I had an image of it one time saved. I don't have it anymore.
How did this cube affect you? What was it there to do?
I think it was to facilitate the easing in between the two worlds. Like I said, I was just starting to learn how to be half in, half out. It was kind of I'm not sure what you'd want to say. Beforehand, it was like, you know how to ride a bike, but you're not good at it yet. You're just kind of weaving all over and falling down, but you're able to ride the bike. With this thing put in my eye, it facilitated me becoming an expert at going between the worlds.
So not only could you ride the bike, but you could fly the bike too, type thing.
Right.
Wow. What would you call that? I mean, when you say going between the two worlds, is there a phrase or a name for that experience? I don't even know how to word it. That going between the two worlds.
Not really. I never call it much of anything. It was just something I could do at will.
Okay, I'm with you. Wow. So I just want to put that into a nutshell quickly. So basically, you first had a type of a drink that prepared you for this process of having this cube in your right eye, and you were as little as 10. I'm assuming this is after the wild hunt, right?
Yes.
Okay. Wow, what a traumatic year 10 must have been for you. Good grief. So then after that, you have this tube put in your eye, and now you're living between two worlds. So you faster, quicker. Did that enhance your physical senses at all, such as sound, hearing, sight, stuff like that?
Funny enough, it actually diminished my vision quite a bit, my physical vision. My hearing enhanced, and just overall awareness grew stronger.
Wow. That's quite interesting, though, because you often think about, we hear these stories about people that, let's say, who are born blind or even deaf, right?
Right.
They naturally enhance their other abilities. So they would have stronger hearing or whatever it is that you've lost. So do you think that that could have been part of it, that was a deliberate thing to take away your physical senses, so that the other senses, like such as seeing, right, in this third dimensional world, and really enhancing what you could sense, what you could hear, what you could maybe smell, what you could taste, were the other things enhanced, but not the physical sight?
Hearing for sure. I think there's a trade-off for having good spiritual vision as opposed to physical. I think that's what that trade-off was.
Wow. Crazy. Okay, so where did that take you once you had that experience? Once that cube was in your eye, what happened then?
We began the slow induction process into the military mindset. From 10 on, like I said, I was in Boy Scouts, Royal Rangers, Young Marines. So I'm kind of having trouble with my voice here, but keep going.
It's all good. Take your time, please. Take your time.
So that began that process. Again, I was separated and kept apart from everybody else. So pretty much all I knew was that regimented structure, that mindset, let's say. At the same time, I was still learning how to function in the arcane world. Like I said, there's 6 magics to learn about. There's actually 9, but you learn 6 of them first to begin with. And whatever this thing is they put in my eye, which is still there, by the way, I think it had to have time to integrate with me too. It's kind of getting acclimated, I guess. So that included a lot of just putting it to use, I guess.
From what I've heard you say, you said that they kept you separate from everyone else. So I know that obviously what you were saying to us, that the gate kids were invariably separated from the other kids because you guys were doing all your things. Are you saying that even were you even separated from the gate kids after you had this implant?
No, just from everybody else. I was very isolated.
Okay, right. Was that for you to use it, learn how to use it more effectively?
I'm sure that was a good part of it. I'm also sure that they just didn't want me to reveal too much. It'd be too much revelation for people who don't have that.
Makes sense.
Being trained, you don't just get this power and all of a sudden you're good at everything. You have to take some time to learn it, take time to get used to it, and to actually express what you figured out. That's what learning is just figuring stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you taught other abilities, magical skills, if you will, during this time as well?
Healing was a big one. I can't say that I was hurt on purpose. Maybe, I'm not sure, but there's some events that happened to me that just can't be explained any other way. Besides, I was able to heal myself much faster than anything else. Cuts would heal up and seal up in a day. They'd be scarred in about 3 days instead of a week or 2. So I think, again, just enhancement means enhancing what you already have, not necessarily giving you new.
Right, absolutely. Did you actually physically, let's say, look at the wound and will it to heal, or did it just heal naturally of itself?
I noticed the pain was diminished and it would itch faster. When you're stitching together, you itch, and it would just go away a lot quicker. Wouldn't leave a scar even. So,
wow. What other abilities did you feel like you had extra hearing? Could you hear things clearer? Could you smell things?
Definitely.
Could you run faster?
Yes, and yes. I also grew bigger, faster. I was 6 foot tall in 6th grade.
Wow.
You always hear the term "shoot up like a weed." Well, that's kind of how it was for me. I grew super fast.
Wow. Very interesting, just to see how all of this is done. And it makes sense that they would have done it and give it to you, you know, and that you would have used it or kind of use it in increments, if you will, like in a momentous way, right? As it then starts growing for you to get used to being this like superhuman, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Were you aware? Did they tell you that they did this?
No, they didn't explain much of anything to me. Just kind of kept me to my studies.
But you felt it.
Oh yeah, I could feel it. It was really gradual though, so it's not like you just put on this ring and all of a sudden you're powerful. It was over time.
Wow.
I think some of the physical maladies that I suffer today are a direct result of getting rid of those enhancements. I'm actually paying the piper, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think as human beings, our bodies are created in a certain way at a certain time, because I really think, you know, we need to, you know, it's like growing into your, you know, when you're 12 or 13, we get growing pains, you know, it's like your body getting used to naturally growing in the way that it is intended to. And when we kind of like speed things up like that and create something so unnatural, I mean, it can't be another way, right? You can't not suffer the consequences or the results of that at a later stage. But there again, you know, this was not your choice, right? This was something that was imposed upon you.
Right. The isolation kind of made me cold to people. I didn't get to socialize like everybody else, so it's very cold.
And were they telling you at this point that you're a special child, that you're this golden boy, that you're gifted, that you're going places, that you're doing things, that you're different from everyone else?
No, they actually told me very little besides my studies.
They left it for you to figure out.
Left it for me to fit into, be more apt.
Yeah, okay. Words are very important, right? Wow, just the way we understand that makes all the difference. Wow, okay. Cool. So now you get to the end of your schooling and you're about to be inducted. into the US military. Firstly, I just want to say before we go in, then maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Caleb, you guys have something called Article UCMJ 25/2, right?
Yes.
And that is really restricting you from speaking about certain things at all. So that if you say certain things, you can be arrested and pretty much locked away for life, and they can do with you what they want, right? Is that what you're saying with that?
Pretty much.
Which is obvious as to why, and I want to just put it out there for our viewers right now, that Caleb will expose to us as much as what he can regarding his career in the military. Obviously, there are things that he's not able to talk about ever. And I would imagine that that's a very good thing, because I think some things are just for you and God, really. So you will talk about what you can. And you know, when it comes to some of our viewers as well, I know you guys are curious. I know you want to hear things, and you're welcome to put your questions in there. But please understand that we are only going to be able to answer, well, I say we, Caleb, will only be able to answer certain things, and I'll only be able to talk about certain things. So maybe if you can tell us, you know, I would imagine you must have been about 17, right? At the time you entered the US military. How was that? What did that entail? What did your induction look like? And where did it take you?
Well, it was like any other person who's ever inducted is they strip you down from the outside civilian into what they want you to be. And being enhanced and everything else, wasn't hard for me to fit in. I was pretty much not socialized like everybody else anyhow, so wasn't a stretch to enter into that world.
Were you excited to go in? What were you told about the world, the military?
Well, they definitely made it seem like an adventure, made it seem like my life in this normal world was just boring and nothing to it, and I'd fit in perfect for this job. Made it seem like a job that I had to do. Like a, what do they call it? Not nationalized, but they made it seem like it was something I was just supposed to do. Patriotic. There you go. That's what I was looking for. Right. They instilled a lot of patriotism in this country, the United States, and the flag and the system, which are all obviously bad things that we know today. There's a young boy that was really important to me, super important to me. It was their way of including me now, whereas before I was not included. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it does. So what did your initial training, where did you go initially? What did your initial training consist of now that you are out of this isolation into the military, where you now really feel like you're stepping up to your purpose in life, I would imagine, right? Fulfilling this patriotic mission of yours that you've been chosen for. I would imagine they would have probably made you feel like the chosen one in many ways.
Not necessarily. Again, I was still just plugging into a bigger machine. The military industrial complex, as you guys know it called now, being just being indoctrinated into that service.
Right.
I was able to excel both academically and physically, and that garnered some attention to me. We can talk about that if you want to.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. So, what attention did that get for you?
Well, it made me eligible for something called officer candidate school rather than just being a recruit. So that's how I entered into the upper crust, so to speak. You have to be selected for that. You don't get to apply for it. least back then there was selection. I don't know what now today. Today's military is much weaker and much softer than it was back in those days. The thing that garnered the attention was they used to have something called Rocks and Shoals Justice in those barracks after boot camp, even during boot camp. Rocks and Shoals Justice meant the beat you up and give you a chance to fight back.
Sorry, Caleb, you just actually, I lost you there for a moment. So if you could just repeat that last bit. I just lost you there. I'm not sure if the viewers lost you as well. I did. If you wouldn't mind just repeating that.
There was something called Rocks and Shoals Justice, where the cadre, the sergeants, could take you out behind the barracks and beat you up if they wanted to, and you were given a chance to fight back. I know it doesn't make any sense, but that's what it was back in those days. Today's military is definitely not like that. And usually there'd be an officer that would watch what happened, just to make sure the sergeant didn't kill the recruit.
What was the purpose of that?
Just discipline. They wanted to see what you're made of.
How did that work out for you?
Well, like I said, that garnered me some attention from a certain, I'll call him commander because that's not his final rank by the time he just passed on just recently, but he was a commander at the time. He's the one that kind of fast-tracked my career. He's, in fact, the guy that dipped me, to be honest with you.
Okay, so was he the one observing you at that particular time?
Well, there's always people observing you in that service. So I never saw him standing there watching me. But then again, I've been being watched since I can remember, so.
So can you tell us, when I say how that went for you, I'm interested to know what the significance of that, I'm going to call it beating or fight, was for you. Did they pick up anything specific around your abilities of your or your gifts at that stage?
Well, they had a hard time beating me. I was able to evade, actually beat two sergeants up before they had to stop me.
Wow. So you got the better of them. You got the better of two of them.
Yep.
Would that be, can you explain to us how you were able to do that? Was that purely because of your enhancements, or was it the rage? Because I would imagine the two together would have probably served each other well. The rage, right, of being physically beaten, right, for no apparent reason, and then also the enhancements that went along with that.
It wasn't because of rage. Rage is uncontrolled anger. It just explodes at any moment. I learned how to focus that into something that was actually really powerful. It was mostly the enhancements that helped me. I was able to, quote, see what they're going to do before they did it.
And they obviously realized that. So where did that take you afterwards?
Well, I made it to officer candidate school out of boot camp after my school of infantry training. There's a whole bunch that I'm not going to say because it would take 2 hours just to explain everything to you. But once you get to the school of infantry, you get kind of assigned to where you're going to go. gets more specific as you go. I went to officer candidate school instead. Like I said, I was fast-tracked into that. That means that they push you through, not so that you learn the full program. It's just they push you into it before you have to go through everything else. And coming through the enlisted ranks, I'm known as a Mustang then.
Mustang. Did I hear you right? Mustang. Caleb, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Can you hear me? I'm wondering if I've lost Caleb.
I hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry, would you mind just carrying on? I think I might have lost you for a while.
Is it you or is that me that's dropping?
I hope it's you. So, well, I hope it's me, actually. It's better that I drop rather than you. So, yeah, can you carry on with what you were saying? I think it was probably you.
Well, Mustang is just somebody who came up through the enlisted ranks. That's just what they call us.
Okay, right. Okay. Sorry, that's I'm just reading some of the comments here. Someone was saying it's you, but it's fine. I know that your internet is sometimes dodgy, so we'll just do it as best we can. Okay, so I just like to say to the viewers as well, there's also certain things that he can talk about here, or can't talk about here rather. So I'm just going to leave it up to you, Caleb, to share your story from here and include what you can and what you can't, right? So just in terms of once you enlisted there.
Well, so many months have passed by this time. Almost 2 years have gone by. So fairly young kid, just a young guy, I guess, learning how to do this kind of stuff. So the attention I was paid before by this commander was important because he was responsible for another group of individuals that you could call them deep state if you wanted to, but they're definitely military, and they get to handpick who they want to join their ranks, to join who they are. I'm not going to say Christians in action, because that's a little too specific, but it was somewhat similar to that, but it was within the naval service itself.
Yeah.
So when he picked me for what I was to be doing, he didn't come up to me and put a sticker on my forehead or something. I didn't even know it. I was just being pushed through different schooling, different parts of this training I was going through. Became more varied, more intense, and also you kind of relaxed some of the stricture on me. It wasn't as much restriction. I wasn't forced to be disciplined as much.
Why not? It's a matter of interest. I mean, when you say you weren't forced to be as disciplined as much, why is that? Because isn't the military all about discipline, really?
It depends on what you're being used for. If you're a rank and file crackerjack sailor, you're going to wear the crackerjack uniform and stand at attention all the time and march around and with the rank and file. If you're not that, they don't want you to look like that. They want you to look like others, like something else. They want you to blend in. So fast forward a few more years past that even, and it got even less and less. I went through another form of boot camp I'm not going to say what it was, but it was one of the hardest schools I've ever attended physically. So.
Do you want to tell us where that? Sorry.
After that part of the induction was over, I was chosen for certain team sports, let's say. It wasn't a sport, but anyway, it went hand in hand with what I was taught in the Arcane.
So the Arcane, you were obviously taught magic, right? Different styles of magic. And I'm using magic with a K there, not like nilly-willy magic with a C. We're talking magic with a K. So the magic you learned there was then now coupled with your training in the military, right?
Right.
When did that start becoming obvious to you that the two were being joined together?
It was always obvious to me.
Okay, right. As a matter of interest, I mean, I'm just intrigued. Yeah, this is just the healer in me asking this question, right? So if you were always like aware of it, you were aware that the military and the magic were working together, and obviously there must have been a greater purpose you were being trained for. Did you ever question that, just on a personal level? Did you ever question what you were being trained for, how that sat with you at this point in time?
No, I was prepped my whole life up to this point to be exactly what I was doing. Each day, I had been specifically told at some point that I was going to be stepping into something greater than this life. So that was part of the indoctrination. So it wasn't odd to me.
And did you feel that as you were stepping into the military with the training you'd received there, as well as your arcane training, arcanic, I don't know if that's the word, but along with, we'll call it the magical training that you had, did you feel like this was your purpose? Because I would imagine, along with that, they would have instilled that whole sense of being a patriot, right? So you had that patriotism installed as well. You're doing all of these things, you've been dipped, you've got all these eyes on you, you're beating these guys who try to beat you up in these fights and things. You're feeling like you kind of on the rise here, right? You feel like I would imagine that you would have felt like you were rising in the ranks, right?
I actually didn't feel like that. I felt normal. It was just part of life. It was something that I had to go through in order to achieve the next level. At this point, I'm 19 years old, almost 20. By the time I had hit the age of 17, I'd already mastered 6 magics. Moving into the last 3.
Wow.
So at the age, those magics.
I want to you were saying by the age of 19, you'd already mastered 6 types of magic.
By the age of 17.
17, you'd already mastered 6 types of magic that they then would have taught to you from the age of 10 after the wild hunt until 17. So for the next 7 years, you were given 6, you became a master in 6 different types of magic.
Yes.
Was anyone else achieving the same as what you were?
There were.
And were they all destined for the military as well, or were they going in different directions?
We all went in different directions.
So when you got into the military and you were achieving these things, were there other guys that were achieving similar stuff to you? Were you kind of put together? You know, I would imagine many other guys also went through this type of training. They would have been recognized to be special people or special guys in certain ways. So when you got into the military and doing this type of training, were they apparent to you who they were?
After a while, I was, for sure. They put us, not all of it. It's not like I met George from 2 seats over in my class. We did this all together from day one. Different people from different walks of life is where I met these guys. So, but eventually they filter out all the ones who can't make it, to the point where ones who can make it are there and present.
Right. Wow. So these would be the creme de la creme, that I would imagine special ops, black ops, whatever it is, then it chooses. No?
I don't like to call it creme de la creme or any of that kind of stuff. Most of us are really anonymous. We're really humble. We don't talk about it that much. It's not like something that we celebrate. A lot of times if we see each other on the streets nowadays, we don't even acknowledge each other except for the ways that we know how to without being seen. Unseen professionals, quiet professionals, if you want to call us that.
Well, this is I think what I'm actually what I was trying to say at the beginning of the show as well, is that this is not something you guys run around boasting about. This is something that happened. It's actually a very traumatic experience for most of you, I would imagine. Affected you all deeply. So as you say, it's the guys who are the real deal are the ones that don't really speak about it too much, which is why we've hardly heard much about this sort of stuff. I mean, you are certainly the first person, other than Jesse, who's obviously everyone I think who watches this knows Jesse. Jesse has been, the stuff that Jesse's been talking about in the system. And, you are probably the first person that I know that has really experienced probably all of what she talks about. So you hear a lot of people coming out and saying this and saying that, but I love what you're saying there. This is something between you and the other guys. You know it happened, but it's not something that is boasted about, right?
When you boil it all down, you're not doing it for God and country, you're doing it for your teammates. That's the most important thing in life, is your team. It becomes more important than anything in this life, for sure. You do anything for them, including giving your life for them. And I've had many teammates give their lives for me. I've lost 19 teammates under my command.
Oh, makes me emotional.
It's very difficult to talk about that, but at the same time, I need to say what that was, at least in small part, because it goes hand in hand with what's coming later.
Can you talk to us about some of these situations that you can maybe sort of randomly pick out, if you can, and elaborate on some of your experiences?
Well, we've talked about looking for artifacts and whatnot, so I'm going to, I'll just name some of the magics that I learned up to this point. I learned enchantment, evocation, transmutation, conjuration, illusion, abjuration. That's 6 of them.
Hang on, I've managed to write down 4, actually 5. I've got enchantment, transmutation, conjuration, illusion, abjuration, and what's the other one, sorry?
Abjuration and evocation. EVOCation.
Okay, yeah. Okay, got it. Thanks.
I'll get more into the rest of them later, but I had to have those mastered in order to find the things we were looking for and to deal with some of the things we had to deal with. So that meant being in the spiritual world at the same time and being able to interact with the spirits that were there. They didn't guide us because some of these things weren't allowed to go where we were going. That's why they sent us. So,
can you elaborate
on where they sent us?
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about a good 20-year time span, so we'd got to find somewhere to start. So the very first things we looked for was like finding paperwork, I guess, needles in a haystack. Mixed in between all of that, they were sending us all over the world to do different things. This is just before the war on terror started with 9/11. We knew that there was stuff in a certain country in the Middle East that starts with an I, ends with a Q. We'll just call it IQ. We knew that there was stuff there. There was stuff in Central America. There was stuff in South America. And there was stuff still in North America that we needed to go look into or see about. I'm being really, really general and vague here on purpose.
I know. Good. It's fine. And are we talking, would this have been part of finding these, what are the things called? Artifacts. Was this all in the looking for artifacts, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Bear in mind too that I was also rising in the ranks of the Masons, so that's something we haven't really plugged into yet with this. I'm trying to keep it simple so everybody can kind of pick up what I'm putting down.
If you don't mind, I would like to just maybe ask you about that, because that has certainly been on my agenda to ask you as well. And I don't know if you can tell me or not if that plugs into this, or if we should put this aside for another time. But I know that you were a 25th degree Mason, right? And as you say, you were climbing the ladder. Was part of this ladder that you were climbing, what did it have to do with what you were achieving in the military as well?
Well, definitely. Kind of goes hand in hand.
Right.
At some point, you go past the secret handshake and the secret decoder ring, and they actually include you into what's happening.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about climbing too much up, but
I just want to clarify. Sorry, carry on. I'm interrupting. Carry on. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, then. Sorry about that. I just want to, like, when you say climbing, you goes beyond the secret handshake or whatever, you now become part of it. So would that be part of the decision-making process, as opposed to being sort of told that's the mission you're going on? You now become part of the decision-making process. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes and no. There's a lot of fine print in there. Mostly what it was, you just made privy to a lot more secrets than you were before.
Okay, so it's more the secrets that you know. Spiritual secrets, physical secrets.
You get a lot of aha moments.
Okay, right. See what you're saying. Someone has just posed the question, and I think I should ask it. Is Jade still a Mason?
I am not.
Okay, there's your answer. I get a lot of these types of questions actually Caleb, I just called you Jade. Caleb, I get a lot of questions around that about, and I don't know if you want to maybe use this opportunity to maybe enlighten the viewers, because I've had some questions about how you found the Lord. I know we have touched on it, but I think there's new viewers coming in all the time. What turned you? I think there's a lot of concern in our viewers about your spiritual space at this point in time. Would you like to talk to us on that? If not, that's absolutely fine. I just think there are a lot of people that are curious about it.
Well, I just had a God experience that changed things for me. There was something that was put into my heart many years before by somebody who paid a heavy price for me. I don't know if you want to tell that for me, because it's really hard to talk about for me.
Are you talking about Charlotta?
Yes.
Okay, I'll definitely elaborate on that. And I'm not sure if there might be people here that have or haven't heard the story, but you're going to hear it again anyway. When Caleb was in the wild hunt at the age of 10, he got captured with a 17-year-old German girl called Charlotta. They got put in the metal box together. They got handed a knife after, I think, day one, I think you said. A guy came and dropped the knife into the box, and pretty much one of you were going to come out alive. Charlotta decided to take her own life so that she could save you. I always get emotional when I go through that, so I know it's hard for you too. Anyway, so basically what happened was, when Caleb came out of the box, they'd captured her spirit in a soul gem, which he kept with him for a while. And that has been what has driven him pretty much throughout a big part of his life. It was, if you heard maybe Caleb's second or third interview, I'm not quite sure anymore, where he talks about Star Wars, that type of thing. And that was actually very interesting to correlate with what Jessie was saying in her show as well. You know, when they do these Star Wars now and these projects, it's really not fiction. That's true stuff. That's how they train the kids. And basically, with that in Caleb's heart, it's what drove him to do many things, pretty much want to take revenge on God. But then through that process, I know that was also the turning point in your life through which you found God, was through that experience with Charlotta, right?
Yes, that was definitely the turning point for me. It was a turning point that happened before everything else did, so it was something that was a good thing, even though it was the most horrible thing I've ever dealt with up to that point.
Gosh, I can't imagine anything more traumatic for a 10-year-old to go through. And I know I keep saying this. I mean, my granddaughter's 10, and it's just so horrific to think that a child that age has had to endure this. I mean, you should have been so innocent and so protected. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, this is what these creatures of the night were making you guys do. Yeah, anyway, so I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to say about that, just in terms of your spiritual denomination, whatever you'd like to share.
Oh, I don't have a denomination. Yeah. I am a believer and I have faith.
That you do. That you sure do. And I mean, I absolutely love the stories that your miracles and stuff like that. And we're going to be speaking a lot more to that as well, because I know you've certainly told me a few things around the miracles that you've experienced in your life. And that can only come through faith, belief, and really being one of God's anointed. And I truly believe that. I know, we've spoken about this in other shows as well, where I also say, God will only send his strongest and his most capable into these places so that you can gather the information, come out on the other side, and literally put yourself through hell in the worst possible way, and then be able to share that with us in a way that you are now. And I really, honestly, I think that for me is such a testament to who you really are. And I just want you to know we so appreciate that about you, for sure. So I don't know, I hope everyone who's been asking me these questions has got an answer, that a suitable answer for you in terms of that now. Caleb is very much a believer and has a huge amount of faith and has a great love for God. I'll tell you that much. I know we're just over an hour, and I'm not sure if there's maybe anything else that you'd still like to share with us about any of the experiences you've had. And I know we will go into some of the details of the ones you can talk about, but there's, as I said, many you can't talk about. But is there anything you can still maybe share with us on today's show?
Well, we can talk about some of the military encounters if you want. There's two of them that I can kind of share with you. So a common thread for these events that happened, the ones that I can talk about, where we were in direct competition with China and Russia. You always saw Chinese spec ops or special operators, and you always saw Russian Spetsnaz. They're always involved somehow. So I think the powers that be, and I don't mean the humans necessarily, but the ones that control the humans, were playing both sides against the middle is what I get out of that whole thing. China is a very hidden and closed up country, so it's hard to see anything in China. But for the rest of us, rest of the world, it's kind of open season, wide open to whoever wants to find it, I guess is what I could say. Somebody mentioned Nimrod, Gilgamesh, whatever you want to call him. They found him in the old city of Uruk. Found his crypt, or what he was. And we also heard from those imprisoned angels that are there too. I'm not sure how much you want to hear about that, but it was a terrifying experience, just put it that way. That put us on the trail for a lot of other things.
I'd love to hear about that. You can share. Yeah.
Let's just say that we, meaning myself and my team, were put in touch with these powerful angels that have been there for at least since the Great Flood. Like I said before, I think the Great Flood is a lot further back than just 6,000 years. I think it was about 12,000 years ago. They've obscured so much of the time stream that we can't really tell. We can kind of guesstimate these days, but like I said before, the Gregorian calendar is not the correct calendar for sure. Even that's off by a couple hundred years at the very least. These powerful angels, I'm not going to give their names, but they do have names. They're imprisoned there, and you can communicate with them.
How did they work with you? May I ask you that? How did you work with them? What were some of the things that
work with us at all? They just tried to take over on us.
Right. How did that play out?
Oh, it was interesting to say the least. There were boundaries that they couldn't cross. If you didn't know anything about the Arcane and you just walked into that place, you'd overstep those boundaries where they could get at you. So that was a very much a bonus to have that knowledge.
Right. And when you say they could get at you, in what way? How could they get at you? Was it free for them then?
They could kill you and take your essence, your soul. Your soul form would be trapped with them.
Did you experience any of that with anyone of your team or anyone who went there?
No, I definitely, all of us knew this arcane knowledge, so we didn't take steps over those boundaries. You'd be foolish to not follow those boundaries.
Someone is asking if they're the angels named in the book of Enoch.
Like I said, I'm not going to say names, but yes.
Okay. So there you go, angel that's the name in the book of Enoch. So I know the reason why Caleb won't actually mention a lot of their names, by the way, is because if you mention the names, you actually invoke them. This is what...
And you can conjure them at the same time.
Right. And I think this is important knowledge for us to know, right, Caleb? Because so many of us, myself included, ignorantly would say things or mention names or what have you without realizing that we are doing that. And in so doing, we actually invoke or conjure these things, right? Is that true to the average ignorant person like myself, right?
Well, it's just like celebrating these holidays. When I say holidays, with quotes around it. You're actually evoking and conjuring, participating in enchantment, taking part in illusion, divination, and necromancy, along with transmutation. You're doing all of those magics to some degree, even without knowing it.
Right.
So it's extremely dangerous to play those games.
And it's true what you said last week. I mean, you were talking about ignorance is not bliss. Just because we're ignorant about something does not mean that we're going to get off scot-free, right? So it's so important that we are able to educate ourselves on these things so that we don't overstep certain boundaries, right?
Correct. Most people don't realize they're inviting a spirit into their home when they bring in a tree, especially a tree dedicated to that particular holiday.
Let's talk about, talking about Christmas, where most people, and especially in Europe, right, they'll go into the forests and cut off these beautiful pine trees and put them in their homes and decorate them, sparkly, glittery, all these beautiful gifts and decorations and stuff like that. Let's talk about what effect these types of spirits could have in your home. I mean, I'm assuming, and I know that what we've spoken about, not all of them are bad, right? But let's say you take one into your home that belongs to one of these arcanes. What type of effect, knock-on effect, would that have in your home, either individually or within the family, anything like that? Can you speak to us on that?
Right. It's called a point of contact. It's like having a door stopper in your door. You might think your door is closed all the way, but they slip the playing card in front of the latch and they can open that door at will at any time. You've agreed to it by allowing that to come into your home. It might seem like a cute holiday, and they might seem like whatever people think of those things. But throughout the rest of the year, you're going to have problems. Most people don't attribute those problems to what they brought into their home right then. That's not the only time that happens either. There's plenty of other ways to do it. But that's one of the big ones that I see every year, including people that celebrate Samhain.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any good holidays that we can celebrate? I mean, seriously, it just seems like these guys have taken everything fun away. Is there anything good and fun that we can do? Really? Is there? That's a serious
This is
question.
something that I taught my daughter, because I never celebrated those holidays. She said, well, what can we do that's fun then? This sucks. This is bad. I don't get to do everything my friends get to do. I said, here's what you can do. You can celebrate every day because it's brand new. Every day has its new mercy. Every day's another chance to live again. Every day is a good day to give gifts and get gifts. So I'll buy you gifts all day long, every day. So that's more important than just one day putting up tinsel and representations of star travel and evil. So that makes all the difference.
I think you're so correct about that, and it's so beautiful that you're saying that, because I really think it's so true. Every day is a new day, and we get to celebrate every day with gifts and joy and friendship and whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a particular thing. I'm actually interested in birthdays. I mean, what's your take on birthdays, as a matter of fact? Oh, I've never asked that question before. The celebration of birthdays.
Well, again, it goes back to, it's a tough thing for somebody in my position, because I didn't like the fact that I was born. I used to lament that fact. I used to hate it. I, in fact, tried suicide on more than one occasion. And it goes back to the same thing. It's my salvation doesn't depend on things I do or what I say, really, but it does depend on how I believe, the faith that I have. You have to believe something for it to be true. That goes back to the magics, the conjuration, or the invocation, or the illusion. But this is a combination of all that and then some that God adds to it. This stuff comes from God anyway. This isn't something that the enemy made up. It's something that came from God. They just use it against you. It's his law that they're operating with. And they get you to believe what they want, doing that by lying to you. As far as my birthday, this is my personal view. Again, today is the day of salvation, and I get to choose that every day. I'm born every day, a new person, every single day. And I always give thanks to God for that. And believe me, I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not perfect. I do hurtful and harmful things. And it's human nature to be that way. But I don't depend on that. There's something else I depend on called the covering of the blood. And that's what I believe in. Look up the story of the Passover if you don't know what that means. Passover is the perfect example of that.
I really like that, and carry on.
You can definitely venerate your child's birth date if you want to. I'm not saying you can't do any of this stuff. I'm just saying educate yourself on what you're getting yourself into. You wouldn't strap yourself to the front of a freight train and let it scream down the tracks at 100 miles an hour, would you? Even though everybody else is doing it and it looks fun, it's probably pretty dangerous.
Wow. And it's so true. And I'm just looking at two wolves, and two wolves. I've not seen you in our chat before, so it's good to actually see you here, because it seems to me you know a lot of what Caleb is talking about. I would imagine you would have probably had a similar experience. A gift is about love. Why do you wait to just 2 days, birthday and Christmas? Give when you have a gift. Give give when you have the gift. And I so agree with that, because I love that. Gifting to me, and it doesn't have to be anything big or extravagant, you know. It can be a cute teaspoon you found in the shop, right? That reminds you of someone, just like, hey, it's something that thought of you, that made me think of you. Or if you know that someone you love is going to appreciate something. I mean, I do that with my granddaughter. Just about every month, I'll put a package together of, even if it's just like cheap trinkets that I know she's going to have bling fun with for 3 days, but it's still fun that she can have it, right?
Or the
So
box
for me,
that it came.
Sorry?
Sometimes it's just the box that the gift comes in that they have fun with.
The wrapping, right? And just the fact that it's a gift and it's a surprise and it's beautiful. Surprises are meant to be beautiful, in my opinion, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. So I love what you've said. We don't have to give up the fun, but know that there are certain holidays that have been ingrained into us, such as Samhain, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, stuff like that, that are not really, that's when they're doing terrible things to kids and animals and things beneath the surfaces of the earth, so to speak. And us celebrating that stuff kind of detracts, right, from what's really going on. And it kind of gives energy, right? We're talking energy here. So us celebrating those gruesome days gives them energy, the enemy, right?
Right.
Okay. That's what we have to be conscious of. Right. Wow. So I know, who was that? I was just finding on the previous comment as well. Yay, Caleb ruining all holidays for us. Caleb, you know, as the holiday ruiner. But anyway, I think it's really interesting, and it's really good to know that let's not celebrate those holidays necessarily. Let's just enjoy life and have the holidays that we want to do. If you feel like all of you taking a day off or a week off work at the same time in the middle of the year, take your annual leave then and go gallivanting around the globe. How awesome. It doesn't have to be Christmas or New Year or anything. We can change that. I do believe it's up to us to change, right? We have that power, right? What do you say about that?
Sure. It's always a good thing to celebrate love with the ones that you love. And love is not always easy. Sometimes it's hard to do. It's not always about giving a gift. It's got to come from a good place in you, and it's not easy to do it sometimes. Right. But it's worth it.
Wow. Absolutely. And I think all of us who can, you know, I think what I'm, in the 3 years that I've been interviewing people on ARA, and I really love it. I'm a healer, so it gives me a great kick. And I've been one of these people that is, from when I was born, I just know there's so much more going on, right? And it's so nice for me to finally, you know, find the truth through people like yourself and a lot of our other whistleblowers and survivors as well. And it's really about celebrating life, because we have the power to change this. You know, if none of us decided to celebrate Halloween next year, wow, can you imagine? There'd be no hype. There'd be no distractions, diversions. We understand what it's about. So why do those of us, even when we know what it's about, allow our kids or make our kids go trick-or-treating? Is it, even if we know and we think it's innocent, please just give us some clarity on that. I know you would know about this. And I just want us, maybe speak to us on innocently celebrating Halloween, for example, or Christmas, for example, knowing what we know. How does that still knowingly affect life, energy, the ones around us?
If you think about it, it's similar to you running a stop sign or a stop light. You can run it if you want to, even if you didn't know it was there. But that doesn't absolve you from the responsibility of going through that light or that stop sign. What happens if something happens? You hit somebody, run a pedestrian over, you wreck your car. You're going to say, well, I didn't know that stop sign was there. The law is not going to look at you differently because you said that. It's going to affect you the same.
Absolutely. So we have to be aware and actually make decisions that are really in line through all the layers, because I think, these things, there's so many different layers of it. So through all the layers, we make that decision that is true to the heart. And it's very interesting because Halloween was banned in South Africa when I was a kid growing up, we were not allowed to celebrate Halloween because we were told it's evil. And it's only been, I'm going to say, maybe 10, 15 years now that Halloween in this country is being celebrated, which is interesting. Oh, maybe longer, I'm not sure. But it's only since I've been an adult. And when my child was a child, and he's in his late 30s now, there was no Halloween celebration. So this is a recent thing. It's very interesting, though, especially about that. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you can tell us about that, or just speak to us on that? I know time is, and I'm watching you. I want to just be considerate of your voice. I know that sometimes your voice.
Okay.
Are you okay? Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then is there anything else you can maybe share with us further today about, your whole military experience? Anything else around these holidays that you can talk to us about the magic?
Well, after the experience in I with the Q, we went into another country that starts with an A, and there are reasons for doing both of those invasions, as it were. It wasn't to stop the terrorism. It wasn't to stop the people who are on our side to begin with. It wasn't anything like that. We'd been operating in those countries for years anyway before this. And again, it was to look for artifacts, look for things, look for creatures, look for, somebody called them cryptids on the last show, but not Bigfoot. But at some point, I encourage you to look up the Battle of Tacker Gar. I won't talk about that on this show, but you can look it up and it gives you some idea what I was a part of.
Battle of Tacker Gar. Can you spell that, please?
TAKHR, I think, and then GAAR, Tacker Gar.
Tacker Gar. Okay,
It gives a small, tiny representation. One operation that went on for months, led from Indonesia to the Far East, back to Indonesia, to the Middle East, and finally to that particular country, one of the stands. And what we were looking for was more giants. That was the point and purpose. It wasn't the Battle of Tacker Gar itself. Tacker Gar was just a mountaintop. It was close to the Shahikot Valley. Shahikot Valley is the Valley of the Kings. You have to understand words and why they call things things. If you're in this country here and you see a place called Devil's Canyon, you have to ask yourself, why did they call that Devil's Canyon? Why do they call it Hellhole? Why do they call it Hell Roaring Plateau? Why do they call these things this stuff? It's because in times past, people have seen things there. They've experienced things there. So that was the point and purpose of us being in that particular valley, and the point and purpose of us being on that particular mountaintop. If you see that battle portrayed anywhere, they only talk about the one incident, which was, it was a horrible day. We were on every mountaintop for miles around. Every single mountaintop had an OP on it, and we were doing our business there. AFO, I can't say the name. So when we did find more of these giants, we found one in particular. We began to study what was imprinted on their skin. It wasn't a tattoo, it was something different. And it turned into a roadmap of sorts, let's say. It gave us locations of other places we could start to look for other artifacts.
Okay, I'm going to just chime in here again. So, and I know there's a country you went to with an A, right? Now, I can imagine that that's probably where these giants and things are inhabiting, right? So you're saying you found a giant and you studied its skin, but now can you just explain to us how you found this giant? Was it alive, dead? Elaborate on that, please.
We canceled its subscription to life. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Right. Okay. So you went in, you found it. I would imagine it lives in a cave of sorts, right? Can you just tell us about that experience of finding it, please? You and your team. And were you head of this team that's taking the leading you on this giant mission? Are you commanding? What do you call it? I'm sorry, I don't have any military terminology. I'm sorry.
A team.
But were you
Let's call it a team.
Team, right? And were you leading the team?
I was part of the leadership, yes.
Okay, so you go to this place. How do you know where to find this creature, the giants?
Well, you listen to what's called human or human intelligence. You discover human by listening to signals intelligence or SIGINT. You find SIGINT by listening to electronic intelligence or ELINT. So you're listening to all this intelligence coming at you, and you start to pick up and analyze patterns, what people are talking about. There's a place in the States called Fort Huachuca where they listen to every single communication on the planet and they analyze it. That's actually where one of the D-Wave computers is right there in Fort Huachuca. That's common knowledge, so I'm not divulging anything. We began to hear about something that was up in those mountains in that particular valley. And we started to wonder why they called it the Valley of the Kings. There's another Valley of the Kings too in Egypt, remember? That's how we discovered through local legend and talk and whispers and whatnot that there's something there that we needed to go visit and see. I talked about the speciation of these creatures, different types of them, different sizes and whatnot. Some are really dumb. One that we got was really stupid. That's the best way I can describe it. It was more like a sentinel than an intelligent being, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was in front of a large cave entrance. And by large cave entrance, this thing standing at 14 feet high. The cave was a good 15 feet higher than its head. It was a big cave. So, thinking about it, that definitely is an entrance to someplace underground, and that's someplace that we wanted to go. We had to get past this thing first, and it had already killed a team before us. It canceled their subscription to life. I'm trying to be gentle with words here. So when you think about these things, that's kind of, think of it that way. After we did the number on this thing, we saw that roadmap. We were able to find other places of interest around the world. We'll talk about at some point.
Okay. I want to know what this giant looked like. Can you please tell us what it looked like? Because I've been hearing fee, fi, fo, fum my whole life. Okay. Now I want to know what a real fee, fi, fo, fum looks like.
Well, it had reddish hair. It had 6 fingers, 6 toes. It had almost no body fat on it whatsoever. Purplish skin. Like I said, these runes or sigils, or again, not tattoos, something that was in the skin itself that kind of glowed. And it was about 14 feet high.
14 feet. That's very tall.
That's huge.
Wow.
It wasn't the biggest one that we saw, so it was a good sized one.
Wow. What did it smell like? Did it like smell like anything? I would imagine it probably didn't have a very nice smell.
It smelled like death. It smelled dead. It's like rotting meat, I guess.
Interested in Two Wolves' comment here as well. Do you understand how giants came to be upon the earth? If not, you should research, because that tells you why giants must not be on the surface. What do you speak to us on that about why giants shouldn't be on the surface?
I'm not sure why they wouldn't be on the surface other than the fact that they're just staying out of sight. People see them all the time.
Right.
All the time, everywhere. Not just, if you look at a map of where they've seen them in the United States alone, there's hundreds and thousands of places around here where people have seen them. They don't call them giants, they call them Bigfoot or something else.
Right. Okay, I'm with you. Wow. Yeah, and I'm just also, because I'm seeing just Colleen's comments, and I know that I've also heard this before, that they really have a treaty. I mean, this is all. And is it right when we're looking at the mud flood, right? Are they still remnants of pre-mud flood?
Yeah, it goes back to the big flood, actually, because like I said in that interview where we talked about this, pre-big flood, this place was a lot bigger. So it was riding on a deep subsurface ocean of water, which they've rediscovered, by the way, just if you didn't know that. Think of the surface like an eggshell, and it broke and then collapsed in on itself to about a third of its size. And the water that vacated those subsurface places are what the caverns are, those giant caverns.
Wow. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I mean, I just think
so you have plate tectonics, you have earthquakes these days, you have all these things.
Right. What do you know about Malta and the giants in Malta, that area, Madagascar? There's a lot of talk about that.
About the hypogeum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, that's another entrance to that underworld. It's subsurface from here. I don't think I'd say the earth is hollow. That I saw, I didn't go deep enough. Earth is a big place. People think of it as being too small and too crowded, but it's actually quite small. I think if you look at how big the state of Montana is, and you were to take every person on earth alive right now and put them in the state of Montana, you would have 1 square mile of space around you. Even with 7 billion people, you'd have that much room. So this planet is a whole lot bigger than you think it is.
Yeah. And so many layers, right?
Yes.
Dimensional.
Like it's like a broken eggshell. It's floating on top of each other with a lot of voids underneath it.
Wow. I know you have so much to share, and I love Jan Skaggs. Jan, you always give such cool comments as well. John, one thing Caleb would tell you is to trust Jesus, and I so resonate with that, definitely. I would definitely say that. I'm definitely, when we look at the earth and flat or round or toroidal, I know I'm going to get you on that one as well. We're going to talk about that soon. Lots of juicy things we're still going to be discussing around your experiences through that. Yeah, just sort of, getting back to that giant that had its contract terminated. So you were saying It had a purple kind of hue, I would imagine, like a purple. Why purple? Is anything specific about purple? Significant about purple in that particular instance?
I know that red hair and purple skin or eye paint or face makeup is venerated by the people that live in that area. They'll dye their beards red or their hair red, and they paint their eyes purple. So the significance is because they as pagans who are pretending to be Muslims now are venerating those old gods. That's how they do it.
What do they eat, those giants? Dare I ask?
Us. Humans.
Okay, hold the phone. Do they just come out randomly chasing people, kidnapping people at night, hiding? They can't really hide though, right? Or how does that actually work? Are they actually sacrificed for them? I mean, if you're saying the humans in that area are venerating the giants by making their eyes or beards or hair, whatever, the same color as the giants, it would say to me that they're probably telling the giants something, that we are on your team type thing, right? So I would imagine then if the giants are eating humans, like what humans and who is giving them the humans?
Well, you have to remember what the witching hour is, where the veil is thin every day. That's when they're most active, is around then. And
witching hours 12 to 3, right?
3, yes.
So right about that, and yeah, okay, carry on about that. So that's the time. Now, are you saying it goes hunting then?
In a sense, I don't want to give you a traditional, he goes out at this time every day and he goes fishing for humans. I didn't spend that much time watching them. I'm sure there's others that did. I just know that was some of the times they came out. And there are a lot of human skeletons at the front of that cave. I mean, a lot of them.
This song, it's so true. I was just thinking about, if you ever put that comment, yeah, simply encouragement, yeah. It's like Jack and the Bean, exactly, Jack. I'm like thinking Jack and the Beanstalk, yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this question, because I would imagine if we are now dealing with all this child trafficking, stuff like this, I'm imagining, and if they're eating humans, would that be their special dish? Okay, I see Caleb's got himself muted here at the moment. He's got some doggies which might be needing some attention right now. So, yeah, I'm just going to follow up on that, because, guys, this is so incredible to hear these stories. You know, when we're hearing about what these guys in the military were really trained for and what they were doing behind the scenes, when this is the type of places that they've been going to. And of course, as the general public, we are absolutely have no information on this. Sorry, Caleb, I see you back there again. I was asking about their specialty dishes. Oh gosh, that's just awful.
Again, I can't address that with any solid knowledge. I just know that they're eating humans.
Okay.
You have to imagine that was all part of it. There's somebody that said, my ex was born at Fort Huachuca. My father-in-law was a psychologist there, and he was also a Jesuit. I don't know if you see that comment. A Shailene Fahey.
I'll just see that. I didn't see that, so I'm just find it here.
Anyway, my brother was the commanding officer of that fort, so.
Your brother? So your brother was in this as well?
I can't say if he was in it like I was, but he was definitely involved somehow.
Yeah, well, I think if we're going back to what we learned in the beginning from about you, that your Scottish Rite family, adoptive family, pretty much adopted 11 kids who,
13.
if not, how many?
13.
13 kids, and 11 of those were Native American.
Right.
Well, there you go. Very interesting. Wow. Okay, Caleb, I've had you on for quite a time. I'm not sure how you're feeling about your time right now. I'm gonna give
good.
that up to you.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. Awesome. We're keeping going, guys. I'm gonna grab him while I can. Okay, so let's talk about. Okay, so now that we know that these giants have rune type maps, I would imagine that's in runes, right? If we're talking pagan culture, that would be runes, right?
Not runes that I know of. It's more like a pictogram, I guess.
Pictogram, okay. So it's kind of, is it like any skin, or did someone draw it on there?
It wasn't drawn on there. It was like a part of their skin.
That's so crazy. I'm trying to imagine that. Wow. Okay, so then you are shown on his skin where things are. It's like a map, and that would be the map to show you where more artifacts are.
Or just places to look. It didn't say X on the map here. It was more like a road map. So at some point we have to bring in the Dominion into this whole thing. Because I think the Dominion were the ones that control these giants, or these cryptids, or whatever you want to call them. The halflings.
Explain that, please. Can you just give me a little bit of context on that? When you say the Dominions control these giants, can you just elaborate on that?
Well, the Dominion, as I know them, are considered elves. They come from Elfheim, and they are a completely fallen race.
So what are you saying, that they wanted these things, these artifacts? Can you hear me? Okay, I think we might have dropped Caleb for a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Okay, I would just like, if you wouldn't mind, just expanding on that. You know, the Alfheim that is a fallen race. Why are they fallen? What did they do that they've fallen? And when you're saying they're controlling these things, is that because they're trying to get these things to locate the artifacts, or where they might be, so that they can get themselves into a uplifted state again?
No, they can't. They fell because, well, you know, as Lucifer fell, they followed him. They were in touch with him and his one third of heaven fell, and they took their minions with them, their believers. Elfheim is just one of the 9 known worlds. By known, I mean that's humans have been there too.
Why do they hate us?
Again, it's because they're going to be replaced at some point.
Right.
So anyway,
That's perfect.
back to the giants and everything else. We can talk about that some other time. But
Sure.
it's like humans have handlers. These giants are. It's like a big dumb dog that's dangerous. You don't just let the big dumb dog run around, or maybe you do, but most times you keep it on a leash. I think that these things had hands on that, and that's what those markings were, because we came to know later those markings come from Elfheim. And they are runic of a sort, but not like what we know.
Wow. Sorry, I'm just answering the question. A joyful Janine is asking Alfheim. That's just the spelling there, right?
It's ALF,
sorry.
actually.
ELF. Yeah. HEIM, right?
ALF.
Sorry. A, not a E. Right. Wow, how interesting. Is there anything else you can elaborate to us on that?
On what?
Just the giants and Alpha.
Corners here.
The giants, basically. I think if there's anything more around the giants you can share with us, your experiences, what you saw.
In conjunction with finding this giant and others, we'd always see these creatures that look like platinum-haired, 6'5" Nordics. I guess everybody calls them Nordics now. We'd always see them at some point. They'd appear. By appear, I mean literally they would just appear. They'd step through some kind of portal that was different than the magic that we had.
Like Vikings?
Not Vikings.
But that kind of, I'm getting that picture. Does it look like
Pale
that?
skin, platinum hair, like white colored, not blonde.
Okay.
Very evil looking. By evil looking, it was their eyes. Their eyes were very empty, very dark, like a shark, kind of. They would always appear at some point. And every time they would appear, they would try to kill us.
Where were they from?
The elves from Elfheim.
I'm thinking Lord of the Rings here, right? When we're looking at the Elfheim sort of people there, they're very. I mean, Lord of the Rings to me has a lot of relevance to what you're saying. I mean, let me just first start by asking you that. Is that relevant? Lord of the Rings, does that have relevance to truth in the way you're explaining it?
It does, in a way that lets people understand the divisions amongst the races.
Yes.
I'm not talking humans. I'm talking about these different types of creatures.
Yes. And I know the Alfheim is they don't like humans much. They like to keep to themselves. They don't want to get involved in wars. They have their walls up. They don't want to help anyone. They're not interested. They don't like us. Is that kind of on a similar vein?
They get involved in wars because they start most of them. Most of them here.
Wow.
I think they're the direct pass-through from the evil angels that fell.
Right. That's like the bridge. They're like the bridge.
Correct.
Oh, wow. Wow. And that would make sense why they then hate humans as well, right? Makes sense to me. because
I didn't
obviously
know their
humans.
names at first. I never called them Nordics. But we learned later that they call themselves the Dominion. And there is a standing eliminate Caleb Jade on-site order from them. Anybody willing to take that?
To this day?
To this day.
So how does that happen? I mean, if you are not operating in those realms anymore, how does that happen? Are they able to find you?
Oh, yes, they can find you. That's why I went on the run for as long as I did. And still kind of am.
Well, I consider it a blessing and another one of your amazing miracles, because I know you've had many, that you are sharing with us, and you are still around to tell us this incredible story. And again, I'm going to say again, it's only because I believe you are anointed to do this. Really, I do. Is there anything else you can tell us about that in terms of your experience with them? And I know someone else is asking you about is it the Palladium? Let me just see if I read that right. Sorry, guys. Yeah, Palladium. What can you tell us about the Palladium?
Oh, I'm not sure about Palladium. I might know by a different name. Like I said, a lot of names that you hear in popular culture here aren't the correct names. Most people don't even know where these things come from.
Right.
This isn't the only populated world. There's other places. That's even mentioned in the Bible. Jesus said he'd go speak to his other sheep. He wasn't talking about other humans. He was talking about other places, other sheep that we don't know about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I've learned from you is that this earth, I think we've always known, we're not alone in this universe. I think most humans find it very weird that other creatures populate this entire universe, multiverse, whatever it is. We've kind of been taught, brainwashed to believe that we're the only ones around. But it's incredible when we're hearing just how big this actually is, right? It's huge.
Correct.
And how vast the life forms go. Yeah.
Well, let's look at the Nephilim and how varied and strange they were. There's a lot of them. That was just coming from fallen angels. Fallen angels created these Nephilim through, I believe it was genetic manipulation, not necessarily intercourse at first. But genetic manipulation, they definitely made creatures that weren't humans, half human, demigods, whatever you want to call them. But it goes to show how many people just don't know about what's around them. There's a whole lot more to this than people can see or realize or comprehend even. Most people are stuck in their day-to-day 9 to 5, making a paycheck or not making a paycheck, or they're doing their drugs, or they're doing what people do, They're not aware of what's out there. It's a big place, and we have a big part of being a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. This is incredible. But I think I'm going to call it a day for today. We've had you for 2 hours. We've got you again on Sunday. So before I just carry on with whatever I wanted to say, is there anything that you just want to wrap up with at this point for our viewers, our guests? Anything you want to say, just in terms of what you were?
Hold on just a second here. I'd like to relate a dream if I could.
Please do.
So I had this dream it was about 35 years ago. It's quite a while ago. No, maybe not 30, maybe about 22 to 25 years ago. I finally wrote it down at some point, but I've been relating this dream for a long time. So, you ready? Hopefully I don't drop out too much. Am I loud enough?
You're loud enough. Can all our guests hear? Seems they can. So yeah, please do.
Okay. This dream began like some dreams do, without knowing where you really are. Imagine getting knocked on the head or punched in the face, resulting in being knocked out. I came to dazed and confused or in a fog. The light was very dim like twilight. I was sore everywhere. It seemed like I had just escaped near death of some kind. This is something I've had experienced before in my life, so I know what this is like. I tried to look around where I was laying, but I couldn't see much, so I slowly rolled over onto my stomach and I started to push myself up with my arms or hands to get up on my knees so I could see what was happening around me. I started to see that I was in some sort of ditch or something like a ditch. There was lots of people around me, lots of noise and commotion. I was being helped up, and a woman with long hair, indistinct features, not much that I could tell because the light was so dim. She was helping other people up as well. As I was being helped up, I began to gather my senses about me. My training kicked in. Training that is specific towards gathering intelligence, noticing everything around me. I noticed that there was a tremendous noise, a tumultuous roar all around me. I looked up and down this ditch that I was in, and I realized there was a lot of people down like I had been, people walking over other people. There was screaming. There was terrified people running this way and that. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen up to this point. As my senses came to me, I began to notice there was more detail of what was happening. There was a snap of close bullets or projectiles overhead. What looked like tracer bullets from a machine gun. That's when I started to notice that I wasn't in a ditch that I was in, but it was actually a trench like you would see in World War I or in modern day Ukraine. There were some people standing in the trench looking down to a valley that was probably 6 or 7 miles across. We were on a 10-degree slope, downslope, approximately 1,500 feet up our side of the valley. Across this valley, I could make out a seething and roaring, massive horde of screaming dark figures, very terrifying and intimidating. It was the source of all these tracer bullets that were buzzing overhead, snapping by our faces. If you've never been in combat, you would probably duck your head or lay down. Hold on a second here. Lay down, but somebody who has been in combat knows that if you can hear the rounds crack by, they've already passed you. The one that kills you is the one that you don't ever hear. This noise is growing louder and louder, sounding like swords banging on metal rhythmically. There was a deep chanting going on from where I could see from this large mass of dark figures that was on the other side of the valley. This chanting was very vile. It sounded like cursing and just absolute hatred for us who were there in this trench. As my head was clearing, I began to take stock of the situation. This means that one performs a triage on oneself, a self-evaluation, as it were, something that allows you to gather what resources you have at hand so that you can make some kind of move in any direction. You look for escape routes. You look for egress. You look for cover. You look as much as you can to see at the weakness of the other side. As I was doing this, I began to notice that that was what I was wearing. It was a suit of armor, for lack of a better term, one that was so well fitted and so well made that I didn't even notice that I had it on. This armor was absolutely beautiful. It looked like mother of pearl, as it was iridescent and shimmered in beautiful rainbow colors with its own light, and surrounding me with the same kind of shimmering iridescent light. Over the top of this armor was this linen, kind of like a serape or a poncho almost. not quite a toga, but actually kind of like a muumuu of all things. This covering was very finely woven linen, and it didn't have a scrape of dirt or coloring I could see. It was just pure white. In my left hand, I had a shield that was somehow attached to my arm. This shield had no weight to it, and it seemed to cover me from chin to knees. No matter which way I turned, it was always facing towards danger. In my right hand, I held a sword, something I'm quite familiar with in the studies I've done in my life. The sword is about 4.5 feet long, was as wide as my hand, narrowing towards the tip. Not quite a long sword, very close to a two-handed longsword. To my astonishment, I didn't even notice that I was holding a sword in my hand. It was so light and very easy to move around. It too was shimmering with the same iridescent mother pearl-like light. And this light was coming off the end of it like smoke. All of this might have been blowing my mind if that was all I saw. There was a lot to take in because we were in the midst of a tremendous battle. I did not have long to contemplate on these things that I was seeing, because there were lots of people who were down in this trench. These people had been somehow wounded or damaged, and they were being helped by others. Some of them were not being helped up. These people were slowly being trampled into the mud by everybody else who was in a panic. Sorry, this is hard to read for me. So some of these panicking people were going to what at least first looked like when you first see a street light in the fog, a sickly yellow light that was emanating from what looked like priests. That's the only thing I could describe them as. These priests held on to small black booklets that they held in a very pious fashion. People that ran towards these priests, who were stationed probably every 100 feet on this trench, were not facing the enemy, but facing the people, who would get into the sickly yellow light and fall underneath with their hands folded in front of them, like in a very pious fashion. It almost looked like they were asleep. We began to move along this trench, helping others up, which was difficult to do because people were so afraid. They were just waking up to this reality that they were finding themselves in. I saw that some of these people could have stood up on their own without our help, but we were just refusing to do so out of fear. So I took it upon myself to climb up onto the edge of the trench and start showing people the armor and the shield and the sword. I even allowed myself to be hit by some of those tracer bullets. These impacts were significant and caused me to stumble about a little bit, even knocking the wind out of me. But they did not penetrate the shimmering armor, and they did not kill me. This emboldened these people, who began to stand up and began to rally. This is what was happening up and down this trench. Others were standing up on top of this trench as well. As we were doing this, the screaming horde of dark figures roared louder and louder. There's even more tracer rounds shot at us. Some of these rounds would knock people down, and they would not get back up again, and in fact would sink into the mud at the bottom of the trench. Other people would get hit like I did and would stumble around, but were not killed or knocked down by these rounds. We began to consolidate into a group that was big enough to move fast and effective, but small enough to not attract mass concentration of enemy fire. We began to move towards the left of this flank of this large horde of evil dark beings in front of us, going down into this trench line, all the while helping people up, encouraging them, and also trying to get some of these people who had fallen into that sickly yellow light to wake back up and to come with us. We were not as successful with this because those priests were very persuasive, and that sickly yellow light had seemed to offer false comfort. These poor people were like moths to a flame. We didn't have time to wait for them to wake back up. We had to keep moving. This whole entire time we were under fire, taking hits. But as many people got up out of that mud as they were going to. Those sickly yellow lights, it was about the same amount. Pretty soon there was a sizable bunch of us, so much that we had to climb out of the trench. We moved quickly, but didn't run towards what looked like a gigantic forest at the end of the trench line. This forest looked very imposing. It was very dark and you couldn't see much, and it was very overgrown. It just looked evil to me. We had to go towards the forest anyway because it was the only place for us to go that wasn't in the direction of this massive army. I'm really having a hard time reading this, just so you know. I'm being attacked right now. I was shaking the ground. It was coming towards us. I looked back as we were heading into the forest. I could see that the horde of black evil beings had begun to reach the trench line he had escaped from. It had crossed the valley, and they were attacking the sickly yellow cones of light, hacking at them with what looked like spears and swords, cutting those people down and those priests down. We kept going towards the dark forest. We finally reached the outskirts of this forest and entered the thing, and things became very muted because of the undergrowth. Our armor and swords gave off enough light to be able to see what was in front of us. There was confidence in walking. Pretty soon we began to notice tall, skinny guys in what looked like old-fashioned black suits that had tails like fancy tuxedos. The skinny men looked up to horror movie Phantasm to get a visual. They were digging graves, and they were throwing bodies into these graves. So we noticed that all this was not a forest, but a cemetery. And the cemetery, presiding over these funerals that were happening all around us, we could see these tall, skinny guys bearing stretchers, taking bodies from the direction of the trench. Give me a minute here, please.
Got a minute. Okay, guys, I just want to ask you just to pray for Caleb, please. When he starts relating these types of stories, and this is, as he's saying, it's a dream he had somewhere between 22 and 25 years ago, and I know he has related the story to me before. And there will be times when he relates stories like this that he's obviously under a lot of attack. So just please, if you just will give him a moment. I can feel it, yeah. I'm sure you guys are too. Let's just bring our hearts and souls and spirits and love together, and let's just hold him in our light and God's light while he's speaking.
Right.
Thank you.
We could also see more of those false priests with the sickly yellow light, and the fake piety was also presiding over these funerals. We made our way through the cemetery, going ever deeper into it. It seemed like it was never going to end. After a time, we finally came up to a building that looked like a mausoleum. Some of our group kept going, and some of our group went into this mausoleum. We were there to help people climb out of some of those crypts that they were in. I have no idea how we need to go into that mausoleum to help these people, but that's what we did. These people woke up, climbed out of their crypts, and began to walk with us out of this dark forest. There are these funerals happening all around us, and we had to pick and choose our way through them. After a while, the trees started to thin out, and the funerals got less and less. I started to notice there was hearses pulling into this cemetery from someplace. Up to this point, we hadn't seen so much of as anything other than ourselves, the black army of evil beings, the priests, and the tall, skinny undertakers. Unfortunately, you also saw a lot of people who are not awake that were just waiting to die. As the trees thinned out, we began to notice it was getting lighter, almost like first morning. We began to see that the trees thinning and the ground began to go down gently. There was actually green grass growing. Eventually, this grass turned into a gentle meadow. No birds, no insects, no nothing, just grass and gentle morning light. We began to get across this meadow, and there were many groups of us coming out of this forest. As we got to the other side of the meadow from the forest, we noticed that there was a giant fence in the way. This fence was made up of concertina wire, which is dangerous. It was designed to cut you up, that you can't get through it. This fence is about 40 feet tall, and it was just as wide as it was tall. First, it seemed like it was going to be impossible to get through this wire to cross this fence. So I noticed that some people were waving to us. Two of these people were my adopted parents somehow. In their hands, they held two long poles, and they were lifting up the wire just enough so we could crawl under it. Along different sections of the fence, other people were throwing themselves on the wire so that others could walk and climb over them to cross the wire safely. As we crawled past my parents, they just spoke words of encouragement to us, telling us it was going to be okay. Once we got to the other side of this wire, whoever had made it was with us, and there was nobody else behind us, so we kept going. As we kept going up the ground, the ground began to slope upwards gently, and the grass got deeper. It was about knee high. Ahead, we could make out the sounds of a lot of traffic, like a very busy highway ahead. Before too long, we got to this highway, but it was not like any highway I'd ever seen before. This highway was probably 5 or 6 miles wide, with 50 or 60 lanes. All these lanes were going seemingly random and chaotic directions back and forth. In front of us were these hearses, all black, driven by the undertakers. up and down the side of the road that we were on, people would try to step out into the highway to run across. They would immediately be hit by one of these black hearses, and the undertaker would take them back into the funeral, or back into the cemetery to be buried. This seems very discouraging and impossible to understand how we'd make it across this highway. I had to remember that faith is doing things that aren't as though they are, so we took a few moments to pray and encourage each other. We all agreed to just step out onto that road no matter what happened. As I raised my foot out to step onto that road, it fell and touched the pavement. Immediately, there was no funeral cars to be seen as far as the eye could see. We were able to walk across this immense highway with no interference whatsoever. There was a large mass of us that made it across without injury. After crossing this highway, the gentle slope started to get steeper. I looked up immediately in front of us and I saw this massive mountain, higher than the clouds. There was no snow on it. This mountain was far away, bigger than any mountain I've ever seen in my life. Usually when you go up the side of a mountain, it gets cold as you go. Actually, the temperature was warming up as we walked up there. All the exhaustion, hunger, fear began to strip away from us as we walked up the side of the mountain. Because as we did so, I slowly began to wake up out of this dream. Sorry, that's something doesn't want me to tell you this because I'm seriously being attacked.
I'm praying for you, Caleb. We're praying for you. And I really love that because I think it has, it sounds very much like setting the captives free and, really you just playing a huge leadership role in this, and that I see with your story as well.
Right. I wanted to have flowery words and play some music and sing a hymn or something, but I felt like I had to say it today. So,
wow, you've done great. You really, really, really treated us to more than double our usual dose. So that was amazing. I mean, I think for me, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, it's really about people, what you experienced, what you saw there was really about people confused, people lost, people stuck in trenches, so to speak, a ditch, whatever you want to call it. Maybe a lot of the time it's sort of metaphorically speaking, right? Often being, what's the word? Confused, deluded by people that really don't have your best interest at heart. So it's about discernment, practicing discernment, because the fake, it's time to discern between what's fake and real. Is that, I would say that is probably quite a strong gist of this dream. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily agree with it or disagree with it, but it was a fantastic dream, and I'm glad that I had it. I've never forgotten it. I've had other dreams since then. And that was back when I was, quote, evil, when I got that dream. Why would God give me that dream back then? You have to ask.
Well, for me, it's very clear, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, because you are not evil. There's a difference between God sending his anointed into an evil place. It's almost like being a spy, right? So you're anointed, you go in there, you participate because you have to, in the sense that is the only way you can bring back truth and knowledge to the surface, so to speak, right? So I think that dream, the way I would interpret that from that perspective, is really God actually reminding you of who you really are. Because I would imagine in those dark times where you were doing some evil things, you probably would have forgotten who you really are. And that was God's way of reminding you of who you really are, that you truly are here to set so many of the captives free. God sends his anointed, and I will always maintain that.
I'm only anointed because I accepted God's mercy, the sacrifice of his son, and the covering of that blood. It's the only way I'm anointed to do anything.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm still going to go further and say I believe that long before you came to this earth, you and God had a sacred contract, agreement, whatever you choose to call it, between you and God. And God said, I need someone to do this shitty work. I need someone to go and dig in there where no one else will go. And you probably raised your hand. And here you are today. And I'm leaving it right there. And I'm sure everyone else agrees with me.
At this point in the time stream, I'm trying to reach back and pull my hand back down. No, after all I know now, it's like, don't do that. That's stupid.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Oh, man, what an interesting, beautiful time we're living in. Thank you, Caleb. I know, I have such a roller coaster of emotions doing the work I do here on this channel, and it's been so rewarding. Over the past 3 years that we've been doing this, to the point that it's changed my entire life in the way I work. Normally, anyone who knows me knows that for the past 20 years, I've been traveling all over South Africa, Middle East, all over, Thailand, working, doing the work of a healer, right? Starting this platform was something I knew I had to do when we were in lockdown. And I can tell you now, I can truly say no one could have prepared me for what I'm doing now, to the point that someone who's been traveling 20 years, 6 months of the year, right? To now I'm at home, connected to my surroundings and speaking to people like you and just meeting amazing viewers on our channel. It really is a blessing. And some days we get horrible, horrible, horrible attacks, not just spiritual, like you've observed with Caleb now. And any of the people that are speaking on the channels know that. I can't speak for anyone else's channel, speak about what's on this channel, right? And I know that how often survivors have spoken, and the attacks they have afterwards are huge. It's horrendous. And people as well, people that are coming in here pretending to be something they're not. And then, in that angle as well, it just really upsets the entire apple cart. Well, that's their intention anyway. But what I really love is how you speaking to us about this, and somehow it's not scary. I think we feel safe with you around telling us this. And I know there are other people like yourself that God has sent at this time as well. But I just want to say an extra special thank you for your story. Thank you for your voice. I know it's difficult for you to talk as well, but I know you give it your all, and this has become your life's purpose now, to share the truth and to help us out of those dark trenches. Thank you.
I haven't come from the teams. You guys are my team now.
Absolutely.
I throw myself into that as much as I can. I'm not perfect. I make lots of mistakes, but so do all of us. None of us are perfect here. We got to support each other and help each other out the best we can.
Thank you.
Best we can.
Joyful Janine, you're such a sweetheart. Thank you. You are always donating to our channel, and to every one of you who support the channel. And rest assured, Caleb gets every bit of what you guys are supporting him in. And I know he's extremely grateful for that as well. And we do rely a lot on your donations and your Patreons and stuff like that. So I want to just say thank you so, so much. God bless you. And if I could see you now, I'd give you the biggest hug ever. And one day I will. Right? One day. Thank you so much, Natasha. No, no, Caleb, you're probably sitting on the other side looking at me. Ah. No one can see your face. That's cool. Oh, beautiful. Guys, thank you so, so much for joining us and sharing your space with us. It is so beautiful to be here. I can't say how happy I am that I've changed my life into this direction of giving my energy full-time to our platform and really just making space. And I know there's so many of you in the chat room as well. Leah, are you there as well? I'm having you on very soon again. And amazing people who are on our channel. And I'm looking forward to seeing more and more of you guys that have really understand and know and probably been through something similar to what Caleb has been through. And I don't know, maybe some of you even want to come and chat on our show and with Caleb at some point. You know, we're always open to that. The more people who are out there sharing their stories and joining us in this beautiful walk of faith, because that's what it is. And on that note of walk of faith, fasting, all of you who've joined and that is from Caleb, right? Caleb started that, and then we started that on Tom's show as well. Fasting from dusk on Tuesday till dusk on Wednesday. Wow. Dry fast. We do a dry fast. You're welcome to do any fast, like a water fast, whatever, but I just find, and I say this a lot, for me, the dry fast is very, very powerful because I fast a lot. So I actually enjoy fasting because I don't enjoy eating so much. So it's nice for me to actually fast. And I'm lazy to cook sometimes, so it's a good thing. But the dry fast is where you really, in those moments of thirst, and you are so thirsty, that's when your breakthroughs come. It is delightful. So all of you want to join us again on our dry fast. We're fasting for peace. We fast for faith, because I always say this, and Caleb, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to saying this as well, but really, when you do this as a spiritual tool to open up spiritually and get spiritual breakthroughs through your fast, you become a much more effective conduit for God's work, God's word, and therefore your work that you can do for God as well. I agree with you, Natasha. Caleb, is there anything that you want to say about the fast? Joyful Janine, I know Kimberly is also joined. So all of that. Is there anything you want to tell us more about the fast, Caleb?
Well, I got some prayer requests more than anything else. A fast is kind of a personal choice, and you don't have to tell anybody anything if you don't want to. But
yeah,
it's between you and God. It's to be humble before Him and be willing to sacrifice in front of Him. It gives intention to it, and He really pays attention. So, asking for relief from these attacks. I have some physical ailments that are not doing well at the moment, and just God would prove Himself to be what He says He is, ever-present help in time of need. My faith isn't always perfect, and I don't always do the right things. It makes me kind of angry and bitter sometimes, so just ask for those to be lifted up in prayer. And I'll agree with you guys. 2 more gathered together in my name, so shall I be there with you. Yeah. That's what Jesus said. So.
Absolutely. And that's why I couldn't, honestly, and I just know through my personal experience of life, there's nothing more powerful than fasting, honestly. I mean, each one differently. And as Caleb says, it's your own personal, no one is forcing you to do it. It's your own personal journey. But when we group together and we all stand in unison with each other, it's just a really beautiful thing. Joy, I'd love to hear your story. Please email me. I'm going to leave my email address here. Actually, it's in the description. I'd love to hear your story growing up Amish. I think that's a very interesting one as well. So thank you. Okay, guys and gals, I'm going to ask Caleb to end off for us in prayer. And again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm eternally grateful. Caleb, over to you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another good revelation of information. I thank you that I was able to speak at all, let alone clearly. I just thank you so much for your mercy and your grace. Just put my request humbly at your feet, and I trust that you'll have the perfect answer at the perfect time. You're always on time. You're never late. I thank you for that. I'm asking for relief from these things. Even if I have to keep holding on to them for a little while longer, your grace is definitely sufficient for me. Just make that apparent to the people that need it in my life. Give them some mercy and grace too. Everybody here that has a request or a submission to be put in front of you, I ask that you embolden them to come right in front of you and just give it to you. Put it in your hands just like I do every day, sometimes 1,000 times a day if I have to. I ask all this stuff in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was really 2.5 hours that have been so well spent. God bless you all. Take good care of you. And we will see you back on Sunday with Caleb. We're going to do Sunday 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the Cabbage Patch Kids. Caleb's going to be doing a bit of a decode for us on one of and what it is, these Cabbage Patch Kids, please. And I want to ask you to join us again on Sunday, same time, 6 p.m. my time. That is CAT or GMT +2. And please just be aware, I know that you guys, Americans, are changing time zones now soon. So just be aware of that. So you probably just catch our shows at slightly different times to what you usually do. So just keep that in mind. And for those of you who haven't watched Caleb's previous interviews, they are on Aquarius Rising Africa, all of them. And the first one is his gateway experience. So we're doing this in increments where we're kind of taking his life in the different stages. We're always going to kind of be coming back as well and touching on things, but it's really good if you can follow his story that way, because it gives you a lot of insight and probably a lot of questions that you'd like answered that we might not answer on the later shows. So thank you, everybody. I shall see you. What's tomorrow? Is it Friday tomorrow? Kerry Saint, the beautiful Kerry Saint. Please join me with Kerry Saint if you can. I know you Americans are snoozing. That's like in the middle of your night, but you'll catch the recording then later on. Kerry's this beautiful lady from Australia who's an amazing advocate for the adoptees. We call it forced adoptions, but let's really just call it stolen children, because that's what it is. And when we're looking at Caleb's story and we look at a lot of what Kerry Saint is saying, right, we're going to see very quickly how these things actually dovetail. And the same thing with Alice Parola's show, the mental health, right? Because a lot of the mental health issues that we're experiencing with people as well comes from these type of childhood traumas. So everything on this show is interlinked, right? So catch the shows. I try, and you're going to see with Aquarius Rising Africa, what I'm trying to do is having a strong anchor that I work with on a lot of the shows, like Jesse, like Tom, like Caleb, like Kerry, like Alice. So each one is going to be bringing their strength, their guests on these important topics. So it's all synchronized. Everything is done with purpose. Okay, everybody. God bless you all. See you soon. Cherry bars.